really get started, I do want to have a quick conversation. Um, and this would be a good opportunity for us to revisit this whole idea, that magic moment in time when it goes from being an offer to a contract. So you guys will remember we have, this is pretty much the scenario that we've been looking at, where we have our contract communication wall. And I feel fairly confident that when you take your tests, this is the scenario you're going to see with that contract communication wall. So you're going to have two firms, one representing the buyer, one representing the seller. And this is the scenario that we've been running together in class whenever we walk through that moment in time when it goes from being an offer to a contract. So just as a quick review, make sure we're all good. I need two things to happen. So the buyer and their agent are out looking at property. The buyer finds the one they like and they tell their agent they want to write it up. So the agent helps the buyer, fills in the blanks. How much do you want to offer? What do you want for due diligence? What do you want for earnest money? And the buyer signs it. The buyer's agent sends it to the listing agent. The listing agent calls the seller and says, we have an offer. The seller has three choices. What are they? The seller can accept it, reject it, or counter it. I hope you guys are dreaming about this weekend. So in this scenario, let's say that the seller chooses to accept it. And in pre-licensing world, for your exam, when we see that a party has accepted it, what do we know that that means? When they've accepted, we know that that means that they have signed it. Everybody with me so far? That's step one. We got to get acceptance. We have to have a signature accepting the offer. The seller calls their agent and says, we've accepted, we've signed. Shake your head, yes or no. Are we under contract? The seller calls their agent and says, we've accepted. Are we under contract? Not yet. We got one of the two steps, right? We have acceptance of the offeree. Then the listing agent calls the selling agent and says, my guys have signed. Now are we under contract? Congratulations, we are under contract because we had acceptance. We got a signature of the last offeree. And then the second step, and I think the one that is the one that we tend to forget about, that second step is that communication of acceptance must go back to the offeror. The person making the offer has got to know that their offer has been accepted. So then obviously the next step, the selling agent needs to call the buyer to tell them the good news. And when they make this call, this agent is not saying, are you sure you still want this property? This call is, congratulations, you are contractually obligated to buy this person's home. Everybody with me? So that's that effective date, that magic moment in time. And like I said, I'm pretty darn certain that this is the scenario you guys are going to see on your test. So I do suggest that you draw the picture. Hopefully you guys got a chance to do, I know quite a handful of you did the midterm. By the way, don't forget about the midterm. So you probably saw one of these questions on the midterm, your practice questions that you've been looking at. And like I said, I feel fairly confident that for your test, this is the scenario that you're gonna see. I do want to walk through a couple other scenarios if we throw our different forms of agency in, because we now know that agency is not two firms co-broking the transaction, right? Maybe it is, but we may also have some other situations with agency. And if we have other situations with agency, that may affect our contract communication wall. So we're just going to look at a couple. I know a couple of you tell me in the chat that you've seen some examples already in your practice questions. That's good. So let's walk through a few other agency scenarios and what that contract communication wall looks like as we switch up agency. So please remind me, everybody hold your hand up, and please remind me, in dual agency, how many firms is it? Dual agency is how many firms? Look at you guys. Dual agency is one firm. So in a dual agency situation, look at what happens to the contract communication wall. Remember, the firm is representing both parties. The relationship is always with the firm, not the individual agent. So now an offer is made, seller accepts it, seller contacts their agent that's a representative of ABC Realty. That's it. We've communicated with the other side. Remember, communication with the agent is the same as communicating with the firm or the client. So once you've told the firm, once you've told the agent that you've accepted in dual agency, we're under contract. Remember, this could be two agents acting in a dual agency situation. This could just be one. But that line of communication in dual agency goes away. What if we take dual agency one step further, and now we are offering designated dual agency? How many agents, hold your hand up, show me how many agents are in designated. How many agents are designated? Two. Two are always two designated if the firm's policy allows it. And what happens in designated dual agency to the contract communication wall? The wall comes back. The firm and all the agents are still straddling the firm. One agent has been kicked off the wall to work exclusively with the buyer, and a different agent in the firm has been kicked off the wall to work exclusively with the seller. So the communication wall comes back because that buyer now has exclusive representation again. That seller now has exclusive representation again. So we have to communicate. So very similar to what we saw before, except the firm is not on either side. Now the firm is still up here and all the other agents are still up here straddling the wall. The other form of agency that we talked about and how it can affect the contract communication wall is subagency, seller subagency. In a seller subagency situation, the buyer is unrepresented. The buyer's chosen not to hire a firm. They've chosen to go it alone. So they have no representation, which means in the contract communication wall, the buyer's hanging out over there all by themselves. The seller subagent is where? They're over here with the seller. They got to have a place in the transaction. These two are the ones in communication. These two are the ones that are working together. But the buyer's chosen to remain a customer. The buyer's chosen to not have representation. And so because of that, they chose to stand over here by themselves. So now, buyer and seller subagent are out looking at a property that the seller and the listing agent allows them to see. They agree to do seller subagency, offer seller subagency. The buyer and the seller subagent are out looking at the property. The buyer wants to see it. The seller subagent is going to write it up for them because isn't writing the offer what's in the best interest of their seller? So why would I write it up for you if I don't represent you? Because this is now who I care about. Everybody with me? And it's in this guy's best interest to get under contract. So is the seller subagent going to help the buyer write in the offer? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we want our seller to get under contract. Seller's subagent contacts the listing agent and says, we have an offer. Listing agent calls the seller. Says we have an offer. Seller accepts. Where's my seller? Seller accepts, which means they have what? When they accept, they have signed. Listing agent or seller calls the listing agent and says we have accepted. Listing agent calls the seller subagent and says my guys have accepted. And then the seller subagent calls the buyer. So that contract communication wall, again, we're all hanging out over here with the seller. The buyer is a customer. They have chosen not to hire you. they have chosen to go alone. So that means with anything, they get to hang out over here by themselves. Again, I truly believe in my heart of hearts for your test, you're going to have a scenario that we have been working in class. But I just wanted to, like I said, a couple of you seen the seller subagent question. I do, draw it out, see who's hanging out on what side of the wall with whom. But I did want to walk through that. One, it was a good opportunity for us to review. But two, just to kind of see, get an idea for what that contract communication wall may look like as the different forms of agency can change up.
I just want to make sure I understand the so the buyer sends over the contract to the XYZ listing with the offer, and then the seller accepts it, and then they let the seller sub-agent know, and at that point that the seller sub-agent knows it's under contract.
No, the buyer is working on their offer with the seller sub-agent,
Right.
because this is the person that they're communicating with. So then once we have it written up and we're ready to present, the seller sub-agent is going to present it to the listing agent.
Okay. And then once the listing agent and so the seller is like, yes, I accept the offer. And then once they let them know they're under contract.
So then the seller accepts, which means they've signed.
Uh-huh.
And then the seller calls their agent,
Right.
because that's who they've been working with. The listing agent calls the seller sub-agent because that's who they know.
Mhm.
And then the seller sub-agent calls the buyer, and that's when we go under contract. That communication has to cross the line. Prior to the seller sub-agent calling the buyer, everybody else is hanging out over here together. So to get that communication of acceptance, to get that communication to cross the line, the seller sub-agent, and the only reason is because they're the ones that have been communicating with the buyer. The buyer, they see the listing agent's name on paper, right? But they have no idea who that person is. This is the person they've been working with.
Okay. It has to cross the line. I understand. Thank you.
Yep. So anytime, two things about effective date, two things about contract formation. We have to have the signature of the last offeree, and then communication of acceptance has to cross the line. We got to let the person know making the offer that their offer's been accepted. Again, I wouldn't get overly bogged down in this because two firms, that's what I truly think you'll see, but it kind of gets those wheels turning a little bit, right? And I know you have some practice questions on these. So just want to make sure that we're good. Always remember, in seller sub-agency, the buyer is chosen to be unrepresented. The buyer's choosing to hang over here by themselves. If they want to hire you, there is no seller sub-agency. You become a buyer's agent, and you get to go over there with the buyer, hang out with them on the left there. Okay, so that's that. Are we warmed up? Everybody loose? You got to stretch before you run your marathon, right? All right, let's Kahoot. So get your phones. This is our contract Kahoot. So this is the last thing we're going to say about units 9 and 10. So this is our contract Kahoot for units 9 and 10. And you got a QR code. It's the fastest way to get into Kahoot. QR code. If you're on the website or the app, you need a PIN. Your PIN for this game is 1962929. And you're asked to put a name in. I'm fine if you want to use nicknames. If you're using a nickname, I may ask you who you are. That's just between me and you. I can say congratulations. This Kahoot is 9 and 10. I think And of course, if you don't want to Kahoot on your phone, that's fine. I can't make you. I don't know why. It's a whole lot of fun. But if you just don't want to, please at least play a long in your mind. Everybody in that wants to play? You ready? All right. Let's go. Units 9 and 10, wrapping up contracts so we can move on. Question number 1. A void contract is one that is ten seconds. Oh, there we go. A void, good job, guys. A void contract is one that's not legally enforceable. It's not going to stand up in a court of law. It's void because it's missing one of the essential elements. In a void, you never had a valid contract to begin with. Valid contracts can become voidable. The contract itself is perfectly fine, but the judge can make it voidable because one and only one party can go to the judge and say, I am 17 and a half years old. You cannot force me to carry through with the terms of this contract. So a valid contract can become voidable. Questions on this one? So let's see who got it right the fastest. Cal came out first, followed by Maddie and T, Sean and Barry. Question number 2. The essential elements of any type of contract include all the following except. Eight seconds. Essential element of any type of contract includes anything, everything except our agency disclosure. Agency disclosure has nothing to do with contract formation. Agency disclosure is already, it's one of the first things we do. Whether you're talking about an agency contract, a sales contract, an installment land contract, an option contract. We talked about those essential elements of a valid contract. Let's look really quick on page 257. So the essential elements of a valid contract, we have to have offer and acceptance, also known as meeting of the minds, also known as mutual assent. So we have to have the parties agree to enter into the contract. We have to have legally competent parties. We have to have legality of object. Cannot have a legally binding contract for an illegal purpose. That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And then probably the problem topic with the essential elements of a valid contract is it has to state some form of consideration. There is no such thing as free promises, you guys. And bilateral contracts are something of consideration in exchange for an act or a promise. Let's think about our sales contract. The buyer is offering to give the seller the purchase price in exchange for what? For the property, right? There's got to be some form of consideration in exchange for that act or promise. So the one that is not an essential element is agency disclosure. Questions on this one? All right, let's see how our leaderboard did. Cal stayed on top. Barry came on the board, climbed up. Maddie's still on. Nicole came up. And Tom is on the board. Question number 3. The law requiring real estate contracts to be in writing to be enforceable is the Nine seconds. It's always between these two, isn't it? Connor says to do what? I want to see all your mouths move. Connor says to record. Statute of fraud says put it in writing. The two do run hand in hand because I can't record it if it's not in writing, right? So the two often run hand in hand, but they do two different things. Connor says we record it to be enforceable. Statute of fraud says that we put it in writing to be enforceable. Questions on this one? Cal is not budging. Cal, you have to tell me who you are. Barry is not budging. Nicole is on, came up. Sean came up. Christina came up. Zainab is up 7 places. She's our highest climber this round. You should see a little flag on your phone. Question number 4. If the seller makes a counteroffer, the prospective buyer is. Eight seconds. Seller makes a counter, the prospective buyer is relieved. Remember, the ball goes to the buyer's court. Seller makes a counter offer. A counter offer is a rejection. The seller has rejected the buyer's offer. And now the seller's making an offer to the buyer. And what are the buyer's 3 choices? They can accept it, reject it, or counter it. They're not bound to anything in a counter offer. They still have the option to reject it. So in the event of a counter offer, the buyer's relieved. He could reject the whole thing and everybody walks away. Questions on this one? Well, that didn't budge at all. Kel's still on top, Barry, Nicole, Sean, and Christina. We do know Cynthia is our highest climber up this round. She's at 4 places, so you should see a little flag on the summit. Question number 5, to rescind a contract. One is eight seconds. If you're rescinding it, you're canceling it. You're taking it back. If you put down any deposits, you'll get your money back. How many days to rescind in a timeshare? How many days? 5. How many days to rescind in a new construction condominium? 7. What do we mean when we rescind? You're canceling it. You're taking it back. Put down any deposits, you get your money back. If you're changing it, you're amending it. An amendment is a change. An amendment is a change. Questions on this one? Uh-oh, got some competition now. Barry's on top, Kel's still on, Sean came up, Christina, Maddie's on the board. Sheena's our highest climber, up 5 places this round. Question number 6, to assign a contract for sale is to. Five seconds. You're assigning it, you are transferring your rights and responsibilities. All the terms stay the same. The only thing that changes is the name of one of the parties. Somebody else is taking your rights and responsibilities. Questions on this one? This is a good Kahoot. You guys are either getting ready for the midterm, or I know a good chunk of you taking it. So for the rest of you, don't forget. Thursday. You have until Thursday. And guys, please don't do it during class. I would consider that a distraction. If that's your plan, please refrain. Barry and Christina's up. Kel's on the board. Maddie and
I
Marielle's on the
did have a question, sorry. What rights and responsibility are you transferring from agency? I don't know.
No, contract. Well, the example we gave was when the lender takes your loan. They take it as it is. So your payment stays the same, your interest rate, everything stays the same. The only thing that changes is the name of one of the lenders. So that lender no longer has rights and responsibilities. They transferred it. They assigned it to another lender. T is our highest climber, up 3 places. I'd love to know who Barry is. I would love to know who Kel is. Private chat, of course. Last one. In the event of seller breach, the buyer can sue the seller and force them to sell. This is called ten seconds. Seller breaches, buyer sues, and they can go after them for specific performance. If they're awarded specific performance, they are making the seller perform. What's the seller's obligation? The seller's obligation is to sell. So specific performance, the judge can make the seller sell. Questions on this one? Interesting. All right, final podium. Here we go. Our 3rd place winner is Kel. Our 2nd place is Barry. And our 1st place is Christina. Where'd she come from? Good job. Then I got 4th and 5th runners up with Marielle and Sean. That was a good Kahoot, you guys. Again, Kahoot isn't near like your exam. I'm aware of that. If you're relying on a Kahoot to know if you're prepared for your test, you might be surprised. That's why we have things like the midterm, questions in the online learning system. I have a character limit in Kahoot, a very, very small character limit in Kahoot, because there's only so much I can do. But at least it gives us an opportunity to review and talk about some of these finer points. Questions?
Hey, Julie.
Hey,
Sorry, I was on mute. I might have missed it. The deadline is Thursday, all day Thursday. I just wanted to be sure.
yeah, I don't remember what time on Thursday it's good. It's Thursday night sometime. I don't know if it goes till midnight or not. I would not wait till 10 o'clock on Thursday
I
night to
will
log
not
on.
too. Okay.
Yeah, not unless you're a daredevil, right? But yeah, Thursday night. So I think if we try to have it done before class on Thursday or like
Okay.
right
Okay.
after, but yeah, Thursday's
Thank
your
you.
deadline. Everybody good with that? Everybody else have the midterm on your calendar to do in the next 3 days, I guess, Wednesday, Thursday? Friday to Thursday. I gave it to you Friday. So Friday to Thursday, we gave you a week. The other thing I want to do real quick is just a couple of reminders, some dates. If you guys look down here in our online learning system at the Campbell folder, and then you guys are my night class. So we have your tentative schedule and just a few date reminders. There's a couple cram courses coming up. Your final exam, I need to go down just a little bit more. Your final exam is on March 2nd. So the cram course that you guys are going to benefit the best from, the most from, is February 25th. That is technically your cram course. You're welcome to come on the 4th. Maybe you pass and now you're getting ready for the state exam. Maybe you're eligible for the retake and you want to get ready for the retake. I'll show you that date again in just a second. But 2 opportunities. Both are 9 to 5, both are online, both are optional. You cannot use the cram course to make up time. This is not class time. So you cannot use the cram course. This is above and beyond the class. There is no additional cost to you. These are included with your registration. Annie Rashid will be your instructor. Lane will send you guys Annie's Zoom link like the Fridays before, the day before. So then that way you don't have to worry about keeping up with them, right? You don't have to worry about them disappearing in your inbox. So Lane will send you guys Annie's Zoom link the Friday before. Like I said, yours is technically the 25th. Technically my day classes is March 4th, but we just opened them up to both of you. Figured if you wanted the opportunities, they're here. If you want to take advantage, you're welcome to come to both. You don't have to come to either. It's entirely up to you what you want to do. The questions I have about the cram courses.
We can,
Yeah.
can we come in even if it's not at 9? Like,
Sure. You come
Yeah,
in for
okay.
30 minutes if you want to. This is entirely up to you. Your final exam is March 2nd. Yep, March 2nd, 5:30 to 9:30. You get 4 hours.
And we have to be in like a quiet place to
Yes,
take the
ma'am.
test.
Yep, I need you in a distraction-free zone. The Real Estate Commission says if I think you're cheating, then I'm supposed to take the exam. And if I see you being distracted, if I see you having full-blown conversations with people in the room, the only thing I can assume is that you're talking about the test. That's why I wanted to bring this up now to give you time to secure that distraction-free zone. If you don't pass the exam on March 2nd, but you make at least a 50%, you are eligible for the retake. And the date of that retake is March 6th, again, from 5:30 to 9:30. Somebody says, is there a problem that I sometimes leave my questions out loud? Just make sure I can tell the difference of you looking at your computer screen, reading a question versus you having a full-blown conversation with somebody in the room. Can you guys see the difference? You're reading the question to yourself out loud versus I'm chit-chatting to you about the weather. That's what I need to be able to tell, is that you're reading your questions out loud. You need to be careful though. You may want to break that habit, because when you go to PSI Testing Center, you can move your mouth, but you can't be out loud because there's other people in the room taking the test with you. And if they hear you talking, they can only assume that you're cheating. So maybe work more on just moving your mouth a little bit versus reading out loud. Questions on dates? Questions on anything? Just life in general. What's the meaning of life? All right, here we go. Yeah. Do you have a question, Nicola? Is that an accidental unmute? Nope. Okay.
Nope.
So now we get into Unit 14. Unit 14 starts our financing unit. 14 and 15 are both financing. 14 is about the principles. 15 is more of the in practice. I'm going to tell you guys something right now. The key, the trick to get you through the financing units. I need you to stop thinking like a real estate agent. Put your real estate agent hat off to the side for a second. And as we get through these units, we need to think like a mortgage lender. Now, I know this is tough because you guys had no idea when you signed up for this class that you were going to be wearing a mortgage lender hat. But here we are. The reason for these units is because we're the ones working with buyers and sellers. Buyers are getting loans, sellers are getting ready to do away with their loans. We need a basic understanding. We're often the front line for our buyers and sellers. And if we have this basic understanding of financing, then we can assist them. Obviously, we can always have them call their lender if it's above our pay grade. But having this basic understanding of financing can help you help your buyers specifically get through the transaction better, easier. So broker hat off. Everybody take your lender hat, put it on. Everybody with me? Think through the eyes of a lender. So our roadmap, our guide, if you will, to Unit 14, we're going to talk about a title theory state. We're going to talk about a lien theory state. We're going to distinguish between the two. We're going to talk about your promissory note and your deed of trust. We're going to talk about the basic provisions and the essential elements of both. And then with financing comes lots of math. We'll do math in Unit 14. We'll do math in Unit 15. By the way, after Unit 15, we jump ahead to Unit 21. 14, 15, and 21 are our heavy math units. So brace yourself for the next, couple classes. We got lots of math to go through. But at least after 21, we know we kind of got like the downhill slope. We don't have much more math to cover after 21. I didn't say we didn't have any more math to cover, but we don't have much more to cover. So just heavy math. So we're going to talk about and do calculations on something called discount points and loan origination fees. We're going to learn how to amortize a loan. We're going to do interest over the life of the loan. We talk about the loan to value ratio, with more financing math to come in Unit 15. Are we ready? Okay. So let's start. Unit 14 starts on page 364. And the first thing we need to do is just define some words. The mortgage Some states call it a mortgage. North Carolina calls it a deed of trust. Both names are used interchangeably. They both are the same thing. Just depends on what state you're in. This is what's complicated for us to get about the mortgage. We all use this term inappropriately. So I need to undo what you think you know about the mortgage. The mortgage is the pledge of real estate as security. It's the instrument that pledges the real estate. It's the instrument between the mortgagor and the mortgagee. If we were to look back on page 86, we'd see our ORs and our EEs again. The mortgagor is the borrower, the giver of the mortgage. Mortgagor, borrower. The mortgagee is the lender. The document is the mortgage or the deed of trust. The borrower is giving, the mortgagor is giving the mortgage to the lender in the event of their default. You are not going to hit your lender's radar as long as you keep sending in that mortgage payment. The problem becomes when borrowers stop making that mortgage payment. And that's when the lender may need to take action. We're going to talk about foreclosures in just a bit. So the borrower, mortgagor, is pledging the property to the lender, the mortgagee, in the event of the borrower's default. The mortgagor gets equitable title, which means they have possession. They're allowed to live there. They're allowed to use the property. You want to put a tenant in place and collect rent, you can do that. You want to plant a vineyard so you can make your own wine, you can do that, profit from the property. Equitable title says that you have permission, you have possession to be there. Lenders get a bad rap sometimes, and honestly, I don't know why. I mean, first off, you're walking in the bank demanding, hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy a house. And the lender's got to have some kind of interest in this, right? People say, well, they charge interest. Well, of course they charge an interest. If I asked you to give me $500,000, I promise I'll pay it back. Don't you expect to collect interest? Don't you want to make money off the money that you lent me? What do you think the lender's job is? To make money. How do they make money? Because they lend money out. But the other thing, the lenders generally have a bigger interest in the property than the borrower. The borrower may have their name on the deed, but the lender has the interest. Let's say, I just mentioned that $500,000 home. Let's say you are buying a $500,000 house and you can put down 10%. So you put down 10%, which means you're putting down $50,000. How much are you asking the lender for? You're asking the lender for $450,000. Who has the bigger interest in this property? I mean, your $50,000 is cute and all, please don't get me wrong. But who has the bigger interest in this property? It's the lender. You're the one saying, give me $450,000 so I can buy this house. Your only other option here was, come up with $500,000 on your own in cash, which if you can do that, I'd say good for you. But most of us need help with the lender and they have an interest. And guys, when we start talking about foreclosure and all that in just a second, I think when we think of people defaulting when they stop making their payments, and that's where we are here. If you default, you're no longer making payments. The foreclosure process has not started yet, but failure to get caught up can and will start the foreclosure process. And we tend to think of people defaulting years into ownership. Maybe it's 8 years, maybe it's 12 years. You guys know I've had lenders tell me that they've had cases where the buyer never makes their first mortgage payment. Never makes their first mortgage payment. So through the eyes of the lender, if I'm just going to give you $450,000, the lender thinks if they never make that first payment, if I never see them again, can I sell the house and get my money back? Remember, the lender is an investor. They're in the business to make money, and they make money by borrowing money. So default means you're behind. How many months do you have to be behind before they start foreclosure? That's all in the agreement between you and the lender. We will talk about that agreement in just a second. And then hypothecation is the act of pledging your real property as security. So the mortgagor hypothecates or pledges the property as security to the mortgagee in the event of the mortgagor's default. There are two types of states. Some states are a lien theory state. Lien theory states use a two-party instrument. The parties to a lien theory state, the parties to the instrument are the mortgagor, who's the borrower, and the mortgagee, who's the lender. The instrument or the document used in a lien theory state is the mortgage. In a lien theory state, the borrower has both legal and equitable title. And in the event of foreclosure in a lien theory state, the process is known as a judicial foreclosure process. In other words, in lien theory states, we got to go see the judge. Foreclosure happens in court. The judicial foreclosure process is lengthy, it's timely, it can get costly. Sounds like a big, big mess if you ask me. North Carolina is not a lien theory state. North Carolina is a title theory state. In North Carolina, our title theory states we use a three-party instrument. There are three parties involved. The grantor is the borrower, mortgagor. Paying attention to those ORs and EEs. The beneficiary is the lender. The beneficiary is the lender. They benefit in the event of the grantor's default. And then we have this third party that's known as the trustee. They are the attorney that are there to represent the lender in the event of the borrower's default. The lender allows the trustee to handle the foreclosure process on their behalf. They benefit from that. The document used is the deed of trust. Again, mortgage and deed of trust are used interchangeably. You'll see them interchangeably on your test because the national section will talk about both the mortgage and the deed of trust. So no, it's one and the same. The only difference is if you're in a title theory state or a lien theory state. The borrower has equitable title, which gives them possession, which gives them the right to live on the land, profit from the land, use it as if it was solely theirs. The trustee has the legal title. And in North Carolina, we don't have to go through this complicated judicial foreclosure process. We use something called the power of sale foreclosure. It has already been decided when you enter into an agreement with your lender to borrow $450,000. It has already been decided that if you default X amount of payments, the trustee already has permission to start the foreclosure process. The attorney already has permission to start the foreclosure process. They don't have to go to the judge and have them do it. They don't have to go to the courts. I mean, they got to go to a real quick hearing. but not the court event that the lien theory state is. So we are a title theory state, deed of trust. We are a three-party instrument. With the mortgage or deed of trust, there are two instruments, there are two documents. The first one is the financing instrument. This is the promissory note. Think of the promissory note as the IOU. The promissory note is the bilateral contract between the borrower and the lender. The other instrument is the security instrument, which is the mortgage or the deed of trust. This is what pledges the property to the lender in the event of the borrower's default. The security instrument is what gets recorded down at the courthouse to protect the lender's interest. The promissory note does not get recorded. It's the contract. The promissory note is the contract between the lender and the borrower. We have talked about essential elements of a deed. We have talked about essential elements of a contract. Remember, our essential elements are like our required ingredients. What is the judge looking for to determine if these documents are valid or not? Our mortgage or our deed of trust also has some essential elements. If the judge gets involved, this is what the judge is looking for. The deed of trust must refer back to the promissory note. The two are connected, so they must refer to each other. The deed of trust needs to state that it's a security agreement. It's a security in the event of the borrower's default. We need the name of the lender and the borrower. Here's our legal description. Statute of fraud says it has to be in writing and signed. Connor says we have to record it. So the deed of trust are documents covered under both statute of frauds and the Connor Act. And then the deed of trust is delivered to and accepted by the lender, or in North Carolina, probably the trustee. Again, the trustee is the attorney that's handling the affairs on behalf of the lender. Questions so far? Okay. Let's take a break. And we come back, we keep going in unit 14. And we're back. Cameras are on. I am taking attendance. Lender hat back on? Okay, lender hat's back on. So essential elements of a deed of trust, again, when the judge is looking for the validity, these are the things that they're looking for, the required ingredients. As we mentioned, these are bilateral contracts. Loans are two-way streets between the lender and the borrower. So the borrower has duties and obligations to the lender has duties and obligations to the borrower. So let's talk first about the obligations of the borrower. Their number one responsibility is to do what? Send their money in once a month, make their payments, right? What does the lender want? What do we want? Money every month, as agreed to. The borrower has the duty to pay property taxes each year. The borrower has the duty to maintain homeowners insurance. Where are my homeowners on the call? Homeowners, do you pay your taxes directly or does the lender pay them on your behalf? Pay them on your behalf. Do you pay your homeowners insurance directly or does the lender pay it on your behalf? Most of the time, not all the time, some lenders don't require this, but most of the time, the lenders will take the annual taxes and they will take the annual homeowners insurance and they'll divide that by 12. And part of the monthly payment that you send into the lender every month is a 1/12 of your taxes and a 1/12 of your insurance. So when those bills come due, the lender's been collecting from you all year. And when those bills come due, they have the money to pay those taxes and insurance on your behalf. We're going to talk about why they do that in just one second. Bear with me. But bottom line, the obligation to pay the taxes is on the borrower. The obligation to maintain homeowners insurance is on the borrower, even if the lender is sending those in on your behalf. The borrower needs to maintain the property. Again, who has the biggest interest in this property? It's not the borrower. It's not the homeowner. It's the lender. So there's an expectation that we're not going to destroy the property. And then there may be a provision in the promissory note that requires the borrower to get authorization from the lender before they make any major alterations or just demolish, just flatten the land, the property. Because the lender has an interest in this property as well. So the obligations of the borrower. There's also rights of the borrower. They have the right to possess the property. They have the right to use the property. And they have the right to do this without interference from the lender. They should be able to do what they want to with the property as long as they're sending that payment in. The lender's not going to get involved until the borrower stops making that payment. Now it's a problem. Another right of the borrower is the right of defeasance. What the right of defeasance says is once that loan's been paid in full, the deed of trust is null and void. The lender is out of the picture. Once they've received all their money, they're good. They're done. So the right of defeasance says that the deed of trust will be null and void once it's paid in full. Right of redemption, in the event of possible foreclosure, the borrower may have the opportunity to redeem themselves. If you're redeeming yourself, you're saving yourself. So the borrower may be able to save themselves from foreclosure. talking about foreclosure. Next, we'll talk about the redemption periods. So the rights of the borrower, obligations of the borrower, the rights of the lender. They have the right to assign the debt. What do we know about assignment? All the terms stay the same. The only thing that changes is the name of how many of the parties. How many of the parties? Just one. If the lender sells your loan, it's known as servicing your loan. If the lender services your loan after closing, all the terms that you agreed to when you originated the loan are going to stay the same. What did you agree to for your payment, your monthly payment, your interest rate, your due date, the time frame, how long is the loan? All that stays the same. The only thing that changes is the name of the lender. Some lenders service the loan. Some lenders will keep them in-house and service them in-house. They're all a little different. We're going to talk about why the lender services the loan. That's in Unit 15. The other right that the lender has is to foreclose on the borrower. In the event the borrower stops payment, isn't that the whole gist of the agreement? I'm going to give you $450,000 in exchange. You're going to pay me back. When you stop paying me back, my right is to foreclose on the property. If we foreclose, the lender's selling the property and hopefully getting their money back, whatever they're owed. A couple of different methods of foreclosure. Again, it probably just depends on what state you're standing in. Lien theory states use the judicial foreclosure process. That's that lengthy court process. It gets lengthy, it gets expensive. When we go through foreclosure using the judicial foreclosure, the deed that the lender is going to use is going to be the sheriff's deed. And I always remember it this way. If the judge takes the property, the judge isn't going out there themselves to seize the property, are they? Who are they going to send? They're going to send the sheriff. So in a judicial foreclosure, through the court process, the sheriff's deed is the document. North Carolina is a non-judicial foreclosure process, better known as the power of sale. And in the power of sale, the trustee already has the right to start the foreclosure process in the event of the borrower's default. How many months you have to be in default before they start the foreclosure process is going to depend on the agreement, the promissory note. Again, all lenders are different. So after X amount of payments are missed, the trustee already has permission. That's part of what you agree to in that promissory note. And in that case, since we have the trustee involved, we're going to use the trustee's deed. And then this strict foreclosure, we don't do strict foreclosure in North Carolina. Other states may use it. And basically what the strict foreclosure does is the court establishes a period of time. They set a period of time and they say everything's got to be paid in full by this date or you lose the property. Yeah, we do not do a strict foreclosure in North Carolina. We are a power of sale foreclosure state. Do you guys remember back in Unit 3 and we talked about lien priority? And we had our superior liens. Superior liens are always paid first. Superior liens are our real property taxes and our government special assessments. After our superior liens, all other liens are paid in the order in which they're recorded, except for the mechanic's lien. It's paid in the order in which the work began. Remember lien priority in Unit 3? In a foreclosure situation, lien priority looks a little bit different. So if we're in a foreclosure situation, the cost of the sale is going to get paid first. What's the cost to start this process? Again, even in the power of sale foreclosure state that we're in, the title theory state that we're in, there's still a mini court hearing that I'm sure costs money. The trustee needs to get paid. So the cost of the sale in a foreclosure process gets paid first. Then your superior liens, your real property taxes, government special assessments, then the deed of trust, then all other liens after that are paid in the order in which they're recorded, except for the mechanic's lien. It's paid in the order in which the work began. If, and I really stress the word if, everybody else is paid, if there's anything left, then the surplus goes to the borrower. The reason I stress the word if, why would we have to go through foreclosure if there was money left? Remember what lien priority tells us is what order everybody's standing in with their hand out going, pay me, pay me, pay me. The borrower is at the very end of the line. And if there's anything left, it'll go to them. Lien holders cannot make any more than what they're owed. Lien holders can't make above and beyond what they're owed. So earlier we were talking about the lender paying your taxes on your behalf and paying your insurance on your behalf. My homeowners know, probably most of you, not all of you, but you know, once a year you get a letter from the county that says your taxes have been paid. And you think, well, gee, that's nice. And you also get a letter from your homeowner's insurance that says your insurance has been renewed for another year. Every month you send that payment into the lender, you're sending 1/12 of your annual taxes, and you're sending 1/12 of your annual homeowner's insurance. And when those bills come due, the lender they've been collecting that money this year so they can pay those bills on your behalf. Isn't that nice? Thank you, lender. I appreciate you doing that. Guess what? Lender doesn't do it for you. The lender does it to protect them. We just kind of benefit from it, don't we? Let's say the lender allowed you to be responsible to pay taxes, and you didn't feel like paying 2022 taxes. You probably don't feel like paying 2023 taxes. Maybe you don't feel like paying 2024 taxes. You just don't feel like it, so you don't pay it. At some point, the county is going to want to collect. And the county may choose to start the foreclosure process. And if the county has to sell the property to get their taxes back, do you think that the county cares about selling the property back in order to pay off the lender? Do you think the county cares about the lender? Probably not. Who's the county care about? The county. So selling the property and getting their money back is pretty much all they care about. So why does the lender pay the taxes on your behalf? To ensure that they get paid and the county doesn't foreclose on you. The lender's doing it to protect themselves. Same thing with homeowners insurance. If homeowners insurance were optional and the house got struck by lightning, how easy is it for the borrower to walk away and never look back? And the lender's standing there going, where are you? So the reason they pay those bills on your behalf is to protect their interest, is to protect them. If you have a mortgage, if you have a loan, Homeowners insurance is required, period, end of story. If you're a cash buyer or you already have that paid off, homeowners insurance is highly recommended. It's the lender that requires homeowners insurance, again, to protect the homeowner, to protect the borrower from walking away if the property is destroyed. So while it is helpful that they pay these two bills, taxes and insurance, on our behalf, they don't do it to help you. And I need you guys to be aware, because once you pay that loan off, the next letter you get from the county is not going to say your taxes have been paid. The next letter you get from the county is going to say you owe us for this year's taxes. The next letter you get from State Farm is going to say you owe us. So if you're about to pay off your loan, pay off your home, or if you're a cash buyer, the advice is that you put some money aside every month. So when taxes and insurance come due, and the lender's not there to do it for you, it doesn't hurt so bad. Questions? We mentioned the idea of redemption earlier. If you're redeeming yourself, you're saving yourself. So states have different redemption periods, which means the borrower has the opportunity to save themselves from foreclosure. Some states use an equity of redemption period, which means if you come up with the whole note due, you can pay off the loan and save yourself before the sale, before the foreclosure sale. You can save yourself from foreclosure. Other states, including North Carolina, use a statutory redemption period, which means you have the opportunity to save yourself after the foreclosure sale. So the foreclosure sale happens, there's a 10-day period. The borrower has 10 days to come up with the amount due. They have 10 days to save themselves in North Carolina. There is a nice handy dandy picture for you guys at the bottom of page 368. Kind of gives us a timeline of our equity redemption that other states use, and then our statutory redemption that we use in North Carolina. Sometimes in foreclosures, not all lien holders get paid. Sometimes they don't get paid the full amount that they're due. Remember our lien priority, everybody's standing in line with their hand out, going, pay me, pay me. And when the money runs out, the money's out. And if there's still people in line going, I didn't get paid, they're kind of out of luck, aren't they? If a lender or a lien holder is still owed money after the foreclosure, they have the option of doing a deficiency judgment. A deficiency judgment is a general lien. Why don't you guys remind me in the private chat? Who or what does the general lien attach to? We talked about general liens and specific liens back in unit 3. And what did we say the general lien attaches to? Compare it to a specific lien. What does it attach to? So the judgment is a general lien. The general lien attaches to, oh, you're still coming in. The general lien attaches to the person. The specific lien attaches to the property. The judgment, or as the general lien, attaches to the person. So if you go through a foreclosure, if the borrower has to go through a foreclosure and the lien holders that are still owed money file a deficiency judgment, what this means is that that will follow you everywhere you go until you get it paid off. Any loan you get or try to get, maybe a home loan, car loan, will show up, and you may be denied the loan until this deficiency judgment gets paid off. Specific attaches to the property. General attaches to the person. So lien holders have the option to file this lien, general lien, protect themselves. Foreclosures can be awfully hard on the borrower. Foreclosures stick with you, they follow you for 7 years after foreclosure, which means you have the foreclosure for 7 years after. Every single time you go to apply for a loan for anything, a home, a car, whatever, it's going to pop up. It stays on your record for 7 years. Deficiency judgments stay with you until they're paid off. Talk about kind of kicking you when you're down, right? But it's how the lien holders can protect themselves and their interest. In North Carolina, if it's a seller financing situation that we will talk more about in Unit 15, seller financing cannot do a deficiency judgment because the seller is already in place in line as a lien holder. In this case, the seller is acting as the lender. The buyer's paying them directly, so they're already in place. Questions about a foreclosure? Another option in the event of borrower default, another option may be a short sale. Short sales are not as rough on the borrower. Short sales are only going to stay with the borrower for 3 years. Foreclosure follows you for 7. A short sale only stays with you for 3. In order to have a short sale, we must have these 3 pieces. The 3 pieces that you're looking at right now on your screen. In order to have a short sale, the borrower, who is the seller of their loan, the seller is the borrower of their loan, right? The seller has a loan and they've defaulted. And in a short sale, the seller is underwater. And what I mean by that is they owe more than what the property's worth. They cannot sell the property and pay off all that debt. They're underwater. So that's one piece. The seller has to be underwater. And the seller doesn't have sufficient liquid assets to make up the difference. So I'm already underwater. I can't sell the property for what it's worth. Plus, I don't have liquid assets. What I mean by that is you can't cash out your stocks and bonds and get cash. You can't drain your savings account and get cash. Liquid assets are readily available funds. So for the seller, it's 2 pieces. You're underwater and you don't have sufficient liquid assets to pay everything off. And then the third piece to make up a short sale is we have to get all of the lien holders to agree to release their liens on an amount less than they're owed. We've got to get the lien holders on board to agree to accept less money than what they are owed. So here's the deal. This is how these things work. Question comes in, how much less? However much the borrower owes. Right? Again, we sell the house for X amount. Everybody's standing in line with their hand out. How is it determined? I don't know. That's a lender 201, lender class 201. Yeah, but somehow, to your point, I mean, all the lien holders have to all agree to come together and release their lien, release their debt with owed money. They could do a deficiency judgment after the short sale to try to collect the difference. But this is how these things work. The seller suspects that they're in danger. They suspect they're underwater. They suspect they're a good candidate for a short sale. They put the property on the market. As we're going to see in just a minute, they're going to put the property on the market as a short sale potential. They have to disclose that this property could be considered a short sale. Buyer comes in and makes an offer. Buyer and seller negotiate the terms of the offer like they always do. That piece never changes. They negotiate the purchase price, due diligence, earnest money, all the terms of the offer like always. Once we have a bona fide contract in our hand, once we have a buyer and a seller under contract and we have it in our hand, then we send the contract to the lien holders for them to get their approval, for them to agree to release their liens. The lien holders are not going to touch these things until they have an actual contract in their hand. Does that make sense? Because I don't know. The question is, how much less? How is it determined? Well, it starts with, what is a buyer willing to pay for this property, right? And I need a bona fide, a legitimate buyer saying, I will pay you X amount for the property. And that's the number that they have to base it on. So then the lien holders do their thing and either approve it or not. Do not let the name fool you. A short sale has absolutely nothing to do with the amount of time that these things take. It's called a short sale because the seller is short on funds. The seller doesn't have the funds to sell the property and pay it off. They say on average, you can expect about 6 months for a short sale. Short sale approval. That means some may last less than 6 months, some may last more. I've done 2 of these, both as a buyer's agent. My first short sale was 4 months, which is pretty good, not too bad. My second short sale, y'all ready? 11 and a half months. 11 and a half months. And the hard part about these, guys, the name of the game of these things is patience. Nobody can pick up the phone and call the lien holder and say, get my guys approved. There's no call you can make. There's nothing you can do to make this process go further. This is all on the lien holders court, all of the lien holders courts. All of the lien holders have to agree to release their loan or their liens. If one lien holder says, no, I'm not going to do it, then we can't do a short sale and the seller will have to go through foreclosure. So in order to do the short sale, we need all lien holders. Usually in a short sale, there is more than one lien holder. My 11 and a half month, there was a mortgage, there was a second mortgage, there was a failed startup business, the expenses attached to a failed startup business. There was an IRS tax lien. I don't know if you know anything or much about the IRS, but they're really not known for their rapid response, are they? So who knows how long that sat there, but it took us, and there was probably others too that I didn't even know about because I was just the buyer's agent. I wasn't one communicating with the seller like the listing agent was. So there could have been others. Those are just the ones I know about. But for 11 and a half months, we just had to sit and wait to get lien holders approval.
If so you're sitting there for months,
patiently.
and do you get notified which of those lien holders may have rejected it, so they have a potential to pay them off and then start the short sale over?
I don't know that part of it. Maybe the seller can, because remember, the seller is the borrower in this situation, right? It's their loans. So maybe the seller can, I don't know if the seller has that information. As the agents, no, we're not going to get that information. We either get a yes or a no. But maybe if the seller's in communication, and it's to my understanding, the seller really only communicates directly with their main lender. The main lender is the one getting approval from, again, that's just my understanding. So it's not like the seller has to call their lien holders and say, approve this, approve this, approve this. It all starts with the main lender, and I don't know what all they do. I have no idea what they do on their end to get that approval.
Right.
But that would be nice, right? You got one that does it and you got a little bit of money in the bank, you could call. But then again, the other lien holders are going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why are you paying him off, but you're not paying me off? That's not fair. You with me? So there very well may be a problem with that as well. I honestly don't know. So when it comes to short sales, let's talk about our role and what we need to know. The fact that it's a possible short sale is a material fact, which means if you're listing a property that is a possible short sale, you have to say short sale potential. We don't have approval until after under contract. But this takes us back to a buyer deserves to know what they're buying. Can we agree with that? And if you were getting ready to go under contract for a home where you had to sit still and be patient for 11 and a half months, isn't that something that could affect the buyer's decision? Absolutely. So possible short sale, we have no guarantees. Listing agents are communicating with their sellers. Their sellers are advised to call everybody. Sellers need to call their attorney. They need to call their accountant, and they're communicating with one or all of the lien holders. I'm not really sure. And then the buyer's agent needs to discuss the process. Let the buyer know that it's a game of patience. We briefly mentioned the short sale addendum last week. I think the short sale addendum does a really good job of explaining these things. The short sale addendum is the opportunity to let both the buyer and the seller know what they're getting themselves involved in. Call your attorney and call your accountant. We're calling everybody. Just call them. Pick up the phone and call them. We got to get everybody involved. So call your attorney and call your accountant. The short sale addendum creates a contingency for the seller. You guys remember talking about contingencies. I can't do A if B doesn't happen. So the contingency created in a short sale. I'm not on the hook to sell you my house if I don't get short sale approval. I'm not obligated to this contract if I don't get all the lien holders to approve. So the short sale addendum creates a contingency. By the way, my 11 and a half month one was really good friends of mine. Be cautious about doing business with family and friends. That was a long year for us. Today we're cool. We still see each other regularly and it's all good. That was a rough year. My buddy likes to pick on me. Like, I'm going to sell my house. Oh, no, you're not. We all worked way too hard. You are not selling this house. You're going to live there for 20 years and you're going to be happy and you're going to like it. He's like 6'3". I'm like 5'3". So I get to pop my little finger up at him, say, no, you are not selling this house. Patience is the name of the game. Questions on a short sale? if I had a crystal ball, I think, well, let me back up for a second. You guys may or may not, several years ago, have heard of the housing market crash. It was a phenomenon across the industry, across the country, and times in real estate were not good. Let's just put it that way. Housing market crash happened about 2008, 2009, 2010. And during the housing market crash, we saw a bunch of foreclosures and we saw a bunch of short sales. As a matter of fact, we all as agents were getting training. I mean, y'all, we had an attorney come to our sales meeting one time just to talk to us about short sales, make sure we all understood, because we were doing so many of them and there were a lot more in the forecast. So it's a housing market crash 10, 12 years ago. If I had a crystal ball, I think one of the outcomes of this crazy market that we're slowly working our way out of, I think one of the consequences of buyers overpaying, of buyers paying more to be competitive, could be another round of foreclosures and short sales. I don't expect it to be like the housing market crash. I really don't. But I think for you guys just getting your license, you very well may be coming into a market where we start seeing foreclosures and short sales. Sellers got a bad reputation during this crazy market. But really, the buyers were the one driving the prices up. For the most part, not all, I'm aware of that, but for the most part, sellers were pricing their property accurately. But buyers were coming in and making offers, in some cases, $100,000 more than asking price. Is that the seller driving up the price? Or is that the buyer that's offering $100,000 more? Think about this. Remember my teammate that was on the market for a weekend and had 45 offers? That buyer that got accepted had to do something to make their offer stand out. And what talks loudly? Money. How does your offer stand out if you're offering $100,000 more than asking price? This is the market we're coming out of. And there's got to be some kind of consequence to this. Buyers were buying underwater in some cases. And now I fear we're going to see a slew of these coming back around. And it's probably going to happen when you guys get your license. You could be coming into an interesting market. But to be fair, all markets are different. They all bring their unique challenges with them. So the market after that will bring its own set of unique challenges after that, and so on. But I suspect we're going to start seeing these a lot more again. I just really hope it's not like the housing market crash. Times were tough. Times were tough in the real estate industry. So we'll see. You guys maybe will call me from 5 years, 8 years from now and say, wow, you were right. Or Julie, you have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know. Sometimes my crystal ball gets a little cloudy, you know. Questions on the short sale? So up next, we're going to talk about how the seller can sell mortgage property. Remember, the seller, more often than not, has an outstanding loan, which means they owe a lender money before they can pay it off. And the most common way, the most common method that we see, for some reason is not in your book. I don't know why. But the most common method for the seller to sell a mortgage property, we got to go off book just for 1 minute. And the most common method is referred to a cash sale. The sales price, remember our seller net from Unit 8? The sales price belongs to the seller. They pay off all their outstanding liens, they pay all their debts, pay all their expenses, they pay yours and I's commission, and then the seller gets whatever's left after everything's paid off. That's seller net. In a cash sale, the buyer pays the seller the purchase price. Maybe it's in cash, maybe they share that with the lender. But the buyer and their lender pay the purchase price. The seller uses that to pay off all their existing debts. and then the seller gets what's left. Again, this is the most common method. This is what we see the most often. It's not cash purchase price. It's cash towards the seller as the sales price between the borrower and the money that the lender has to bring. So if the borrower is bringing 10%, does that make sense? The borrower is bringing 10%, the lender's bringing 90%. The two of them together are bringing the full purchase price. So this is what we see most often. These other ones are weird. I've never in my years seen them. I don't know when you would use them. I know they're in the syllabus with a green star, so we're going to mention them super quickly and move on. Another way to sell the mortgage property could be something called subject to the mortgage. And anything that's subject to the mortgage, the buyer takes the mortgage, but all the liability remains on the seller. If you were the seller, would you agree to do this? No. Be responsible for somebody else. Are you kidding me? It'd be good to be responsible for myself some days. So in the event of default, if the buyer stops paying, the lender is going to go after the seller. The liability stays on the seller. So subject to the mortgage. The other really weird one that we have, we're not going to see once you get out of pre-licensing, is assuming a seller's mortgage. If you're assuming the seller's mortgage, again, the buyer takes the mortgage, they start making the payments. In the event of the buyer's default, the lender will go after the buyer first, but if they don't have it, then they still have the ability to go back on the seller to collect. So in the event of foreclosure, both parties are still on the hook. Again, as a seller, I still don't really like the idea of this. Looks better than the sale to the mortgage. So as a seller, I think I'll just do a cash sale so I can sever all ties and be done. You see now why we see the cash sale more often? Because these are just weird. You may be able to assign. That would be something different. We're going to talk about assigning. This is assuming, means taking on their liability, but they're still, the seller's still on the hook. So we got two instruments. We've talked about the deed of trust is the pledge, the security. The deed of trust is what gets recorded. The other instrument that we mentioned is the promissory note. This is the IOU. This is the contract between the lender and the borrower. All the terms of the loan, when you pay and how much and for how long is spelled out in the promissory note. How many months payment do you have to miss before they start the foreclosure process is all spelled out in the promissory note. So this is the bilateral contract between the lender and the borrower. And if the judge has it, they're looking for some essential elements to determine its validity. One thing they need in the promissory note are the terms. How much is the debt? When are you going to pay you back? Over how many months? X amount over how many months? Because it's an IOU, that's exactly what it is. The borrower is promising to pay. So the borrower signs that IOU. They sign what they're promised to pay. This is not recorded. The promissory note does not get recorded. What gets recorded is the deed of trust. A common provision that we may see in the promissory note is whether or not it's a negotiable instrument. If it's negotiable, that means that the lender has the right to service your loan. If the lender is servicing your loan, they're selling your loan. They're selling your loan to another lender. They can sell negotiable instruments. A non-negotiable instrument means it can't be serviced. It can't be sold. Again, we'll talk about why lenders service your loans. My homeowners on the calls, anybody still making payments to the lender that originated their loan? Maybe a few of you. Some lenders keep their loans in-house. Some lenders service them themselves. Most service them, most sell them to others. More on that in Unit 15. Some other provisions we may see in the promissory note. It's not uncommon to have an acceleration clause. What the acceleration clause says is, in the event of the borrower's default, the lender has the right to accelerate the maturity of the loan. So if the borrower goes into default, they can call the whole note due. They can accelerate the maturity, call the whole note due. Some lenders, not many anymore, but there are still some out there that have a prepayment penalty clause. Prepayment penalty clause is something you could owe the lender if you pay your loan off early. So if you win the lottery this weekend and you pay the lender off, they may charge you a prepayment penalty. If you pay more than your monthly payment, you pay it off sooner, they may charge you a prepayment penalty. If you pay that loan off sooner, the lender's not getting all of the money that they thought they were going to get when they originated that loan. So they may, again, not common, but they are still out there. Some lenders may still charge a prepayment penalty if you pay it off early, just so they can help make that money and interest. And then there's something called the due on sale clause, which says the entire note is due when? It's due on the sale of the property. So if you sell your property before you pay it off, they require the whole note due. This can also be referred to as the alienation clause. Another one of those two words mean the same thing. Two terms mean the same thing.
Well, aren't you always paying off the loan before you sell it?
I'm sorry?
On the due on sale clause, you said you have to, when you sell the house, you have to pay your loan. Well, don't you normally do that?
Right,
You pay
because
off
of the
all of the loan.
provision, because of the provision in the promissory note that requires the seller to pay it off when they sell. The whole amount due is due when you sell it. And that's a provision in the promissory note. If they didn't have that in there, then you wouldn't be required to.
But it's in most loans, right?
It's in the promissory note.
Okay.
If the lender wants you to pay it off when you sell your property. So the whole note is due when you sell it, when you transfer that deed. So let's look at an example real quick. A bank loaned Roy a home. Bank loaned Roy, there we go, home purchaser, $350,000 at 4% interest rate, repayable in monthly installments for 30 years. There's the terms of our loan. Several years later, Roy defaulted by missing 4 payments and still owing $338,000. Oh, Roy. The bank set a notice of default and gave Roy an opportunity to catch up, but Roy did not respond. So the bank initiates acceleration clause and says if Roy does not come up with the entire amount due, the bank will begin the foreclosure process. The bank has accelerated the maturity of the loan. Remember, it's a two-way street. I pay you, and if I stop, you have the right to take the property so the lender can protect their interest. Questions? All right, let's take 10. Get your calculators. We're going to pick them up when we get back. And we're back. So cameras are on. Of course. And I am taking attendance. We keep going. So pick it back up 14 on page 373, we need to define some more words. So 373, 374. Principal is the amount of money that you borrow. When you marched in the bank and said, I want to buy a house, give me $450,000. That $450,000 is your principal. Interest is what the lender charges you to borrow that money. The principal is yours, goes towards the house. The interest is the lender's. It's what they charge you to borrow that money. The principal and the interest together are referred to as your debt service. Principal and interest are your debt service. Principal and interest are your debt service. It's another one of these things that is way too easy to say principal and interest on your test. What they like to say is debt service. It's your debt service. It's what you owe the bank. So your principal and your interest are your debt service. The PITI is your total payment. So every month your payment goes towards principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. PITI is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Remember, we said earlier that you pay 1/12 of your annual taxes and you pay 1/12 of your annual insurance. So your PITI, or some of you like to call it your PITI is what you send to the lender every month. Only the principal and the interest count as your debt service. Taxes and insurance do not go to the lender. They go to the county and the insurance agent. If you amortize your loan, amortization, you're making regular level payments every month. An amortized loan has to deal with debt service. So with an amortized loan, you make the same principal and interest payment every single month for the life of the loan. Again, my homeowner's on the call. Sometimes your mortgage payment goes up, right? I guess it could go down, but let's face it, it's more likely to go up. What's causing your mortgage payment to go up is because there's been a change in taxes and insurance. Your principal and your interest, your debt service stays the same for the life of the loan. It's an amortized loan. There are regular monthly payments. What changes each month, and the math that we're getting ready to do, is how much is applied to principal and how much is applied to interest. When you originate a loan, you buy your house, you get the keys. When you start making those mortgage payments and you start paying the lender back, you first start by paying a little bit of principal and a whole lot of interest. And as time goes on, you pay more and more principal and less interest. And that's what changes each month. How much is applied to principal, how much is applied to interest. You have a very nice picture in your book on page 374 that shows a level payment. The payment is the same every single month. The light gray is your principal, the dark gray is your interest. Who's gonna get their money first? You or the lender? The lender, to reduce their risk. So every month you pay the same amount of debt service. And what changes each month is how much is applied to principal and how much is applied to interest. So here's a nice little chart going off book. If you want to take a screenshot of it, take a picture. Remember, you have my PowerPoints in the online learning system. But this is kind of the flow chart. It has our pity, principal and interest, taxes and insurance, and where that money goes each month. Taxes and insurance go into an escrow account that the lender has on your behalf. They hang on to that money until taxes and insurance come due, and then they pay those bills on your behalf. You guys get a screenshot if you want it. You got your PowerPoint. Try to get out of the way when I say screenshot. So let's just talk about principal and interest. Don't worry about taxes and insurance for the time being. To have everybody's focus, we're just going to talk about your debt service, your principal and your interest. Interest is usually payable in arrears, which means when you make your mortgage payment, you're paying last month's interest. So what month is this? February? When you made your mortgage payment on February 1st, you paid January's interest. When you make your mortgage payment on March 1st, you pay February's interest. Interest is paid in arrears. Everybody stop and look with me. Where is your rear? Let's look. Where is it? Your rear is behind you. So if you never remember, just look back. Interest is paid in arrears. Amortized loans can either be fully amortized or partially amortized. A fully amortized loan means when you make your last mortgage payment, the amount that you owe is zero. You have amortized that thing down to zero. You make that last payment and you're done. If you partially amortize the loan, you still are making level payments every month. But when you make your last payment, you still have a balance due. And that balance due is in one lump sum after you make your last payment. And that lump sum is known as your balloon payment. So you make regular payments every month, as you do with a fully amortized loan. And at the end, once you make your last payment, you have one final payment balance due, and that's your balloon payment. And as we said, it's not uncommon for lenders to have an escrow account for your taxes and insurance, but not all do. All lenders are different, kind of like all real estate firms. They're all different. Questions so far? So there are 3 steps or 3 formulas, if you will, however you want to see this, to amortize a loan. I need you guys to either write these 3 steps down pretty quickly, take a picture with your phone, preferably. Because we're going to use these 3 steps in just a second to amortize our loan. So I need you to have the formulas. All formulas go on a flashcard. If you don't know the formula, you can't solve the problem. Another recommendation is take a piece of paper and write the word formula across the top and add to it so you have them all together at the end. So what we're looking at, the 3 formulas are the 3 steps. And these are the 3 steps that we take to amortize your loan every single month. Remember, we just said your principal and interest stay the same. If you pay $450 towards principal and interest on month 1, you're going to pay $450 on month 2, month 18, month 138, right? Your debt service stays the same. What changes each month is how much is applied to the principal and how much is applied to the interest, and determining what is applied to the principal and what is applied to the interest. And then what my balance due is next month, going into the next month, is how we amortize a loan. 3 steps every single month. I got plenty of practice for you guys. Of course, we're going to do a few months together right now. Once I make sure everybody has this all jotted down or pictures. And we also got I think I amortized at 12 months for you guys in the online learning system. I'm telling you, if you can do these 3 steps 12 times, you've got it down pat for your exam. They're not going to ask you to go 12 months. You don't have that kind of time on your test. So if they ask you to amortize a loan, they're looking for information on like the first month or the second month. Also, any of these could be a good candidate. So the problem may not necessarily ask you what's the next month's balance. They may ask you what's this month's principal or what's this month's interest. So these are the steps to amortize it monthly, but any of these could be a good candidate for the exam. Everybody have this in front of you where we can refer to it as we work some of these together? Either a picture. All right, I'm going to do my split screen real quick so you can like see me. No, go that. Everybody see the PowerPoint okay? Is that good? Okay. So we're going to work one of these together. And then, of course, I'm going to let you do 1 or 2 too, depending how we do. Okay. I can't have all the fun. I need to let you guys have some fun too. So we see a math problem. What's the very first thing we do when we see a math problem? Read. I love y'all. Breathe and read, read and breathe, right? So we just read. Your buyer is approved for a $100,000 loan at a 5% interest rate for 30 years. Monthly principal and interest payments is $499.55. Find the balance of the loan after the first month. We're going to take this a few months further. When I start to amortize a loan, the first thing I'm going to do is set myself up. I'm a nice, neat rows and columns kind of gal. I like things where I can see them and see exactly what it is that I'm dealing with. So we have my headings here. So I start with my monthly payment. I have my monthly interest. MO is monthly. I have my monthly principal. PRINCIP. Have you ever typed with 30 people looking at you? And then I have my balance. No pressure, right? The balance is how much I owe the lender after I make my payment each month. I tend to like to write my interest rate somewhere on my paper because I know I need to refer to it every single month. So I tend to like to write it somewhere where I have that information. Now I look at the problem and I'm told that my monthly payment is $499.55. That is my monthly payment for month 1, month 2, month 3. That is my monthly payment for the life of this loan. Every single month for the next 30 years, my debt service is $499.55. That's how much I owe the bank every single month. $499.55. So this is my monthly payment for as long as I have the loan. My starting balance is my loan amount on day 1. How much did I borrow from the bank when I wanted to buy this house? So my starting balance for month 1 is my starting principal. What did I borrow from the bank? This is all we need. This and our 3 steps, our 3 formulas, is all we need to amortize this loan 360 times. 30 times 12 is 360. And when you are taking a 30-year loan, you are promising to pay the lender $499.55 for the next 360 months. That's a long time. This is a big commitment. 30 years. So now we look at our steps. Y'all look with me. Again, we're going to do the first one together, and then you guys are going to do one the next month on your own. So my first step says I take my balance times my interest rate, and that gives me annual interest. Everybody see this with me? You looking at your steps? So I take my balance times my interest rate to give me annual interest. The problem doesn't want annual interest though. It wants monthly. How many months are in a year? 12. So to take my annual and break it down to monthly, I divide by 12, and that gives me my first month's interest rate. I'm sorry, my first month's interest of $416.67. So the first month I make this payment of $499.55, $416.67 is going towards the monthly interest. That's step 1. It's to find monthly interest. Questions on step 1? Step 2 is to find my monthly principal. Principal plus interest. Principal plus interest equals my monthly payment. So for step 2, to find my monthly payment, to find my monthly principal, I take my monthly payment and I deduct the interest. And that gives me this month's principal. So $499.55 minus $416.67 gives me $82.88. So when I'm making this payment, my very first payment of $499.55, $416.67 is going towards interest, $82.88 is going towards principal. This is a fantastic place to stop and check yourself. Does the monthly interest plus the monthly payment, no, plus the monthly principal, sorry, does the monthly interest plus the monthly principal equal your monthly payment? So step 2, we found the monthly principal. Questions on step 2? Now, the last step is to find your balance. What do you owe the bank going into month 2? Principal reduces the balance. Principal reduces the balance. So our third step, our third formula says we take the balance minus the principal to give us our balance going in to month 2. And now going into month 2, I start with a balance. I only owe the bank $99,917.12. Then you amortize month 2 by taking your new balance of $99,917.12 times the interest rate to get annual interest divided by 12. You do these 3 steps every single month for the next 360 months. And again, what we're determining, we know how much you are paying every month, $499.55. What we're determining is how much is applied to the principal and how much is applied to the interest. And that takes us back to our little picture on page 374. That's how they calculate the principal and the interest. So now what I want you guys to do is tell me in a private chat, what is your, and let's see, I got to get rid of this stuff. What is your balance going into month 3 once you make your second payment? So start with a balance of $99,917.12 and tell me in a private chat what's your balance going into month 3.
What month? Is it month 3 you
So
said?
you're gonna do those same steps for month 2, and you're gonna tell me what your balance is going into month 3. So once you do the 3 steps, you'll know how much you owe the bank when you start month 3.
Julie?
Yeah.
Are you asking, so after we do the second month, what is that balance?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Give about another minute, then we're going to talk about it. Okay. So step one, or formula one, says we take the balance. Now I owe $99,917.12 times the interest rate to get annual interest. Now I have annual interest of $4,995. We'll just round there and say 86 cents. Once you get the annual, best bet not to clear your calculator at all, right? Couple of reasons. First off, you're working with the real number. The second off, the more often you touch your calculator, the more chance you have for human error. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes my big clunky fingers get in the way. So if you cannot touch your calculator, just hit divide by 12. You're going to get an accurate number. I chose to round here, but I hadn't cleaned my calculator. So let's do that. So then we divide by 12. And I get this month's 32. I get my second month's monthly interest of $416.32. See how interest on month 2 came down just a little bit. Remember, we still got 29 years and 10 months to do this, right? This is a process, so it's going to come down just a little bit each month. So we're not paying as much interest in month 2. So my monthly interest is $416.32. Step 1 is to find monthly interest. Questions on this? Step 2 is to find my second month's monthly principal. Interest plus the principal equals my monthly payment. So to find my principal, I take my monthly payment minus this month's interest to get this month's principal of $83.23. Again, you see how that came down? Just a little bit. I'm sorry, that went up. Interest came down, principal went up. There you go. Does that sound better? Okay. So interest went down just a little bit. Principal went up just a little bit. So interest plus principal equals my monthly payment. And then the last step is to find my balance going into the next month. In other words, if I win the lottery tomorrow, when I win the lottery tomorrow, how much do I owe the bank? Power of positive thinking, right? I'll get a substitute for you guys. Don't worry. No, I'm just kidding. I win. So the next question is, how much do I owe the bank? What's my balance going into the next month? Principal reduces the balance. So I started with a balance of $99,917.12. I had $83.23 applied to my balance. So now I only owe the bank $99,833.89. So my balance going into month 3. And then you would start there and do those 3 steps. I'm telling you guys, the keys to these, you got to know those formulas. And again, I'll show you in just a second. I got an amortized sheet for you guys. I did 12 months. I did this problem for 12 months. So you can see, and you can go back and check yourself. I promise you, if you amortize this thing 12 times, you'll have those 3 steps down pat. Now, your exam is not going to ask you to go much past the first or the second month, because time is an issue. So I don't need you to worry about the balance after you make your 15th payment or something crazy like that. Okay. The only reason I put the 12 months, I have that available in the online learning system, is for you to do those 3 steps 12 times and get in those habits. Practice, practice, practice. Questions on amortizing a loan? It's full equal payments every month. The difference is how much is applied to the interest, how much is applied to the principal. My homeowners, a couple things for you guys. First off, when you left the closing attorney, you probably walked away with a packet of paperwork or maybe a thumb drive, and then you moved it and you unpacked it and it probably went in a drawer and it's still probably sitting there from when, the day you moved in. Sound about right? If you were to ever look in that packet of information, you're going to find your loan fully amortized. Wait till after class, please. But that's part of what you get from the attorney when you purchase a home, along with all that packet of information. You get a fully amortized loan. So you can see every single month for the next 360 months, how much is going to be applied to principal and how much is going to be applied to interest. Here's the deal. The moment that you make a payment 1 penny more than $499.56, you throw that whole, or 55, you throw that whole amortization schedule off. Because remember, it's the principal that reduces the balance. So let's pretend for a second. Let's pretend that you're getting ready to make your second payment and you get a bonus from work. Good job, by the way. So you get a bonus from work, and let's say this month they give you an extra $500, and you decide you want to apply that $500 to your mortgage. That $500 is part of your principal, because the lender can only make this much interest each month. The balance times the interest rate divided by 12. The interest can't change. You can't prepay interest. But if you do take that bonus from work, now you had a starting bonus of $99,917.12 minus your monthly principal payment of $83.23 minus that bonus you got from work. So now instead of $99,833, now because you've applied more to the principal, that's that much interest that you have to pay. Because now when you amortize month 3, you're starting with a balance of $99,333 and not $99,833. So when you bought your home, or if you're getting ready to buy a home, you may have been told any extra you can put on your payment is good, because it comes off the principal. That's that much less that you owe the lender. And you're not going to have this loan for 30 years now. And your whole amortization schedule is thrown off kilter. The principal is what reduces the balance. And anything more than $499.55 is in your favor. Questions? I do recommend rows and columns so you can fill it in. And guys, please remember, any of these could be a candidate. You could be asked, what's the first month's interest? You could be asked, what's the first month's principal? Or you could be asked, what's the balance after you make the first payment? So those three, I call them steps because I think that's less intimidating, the formulas, but let's call it what it is. Those three formulas I gave you guys allows you to fill this whole thing in, and you can answer any of those questions on your test. So amortization is breaking it down month by month by month. What happens to your money each month? Questions on that? Can I erase the red? Does everybody have the steps? Okay. Real quick before I forget, because I know me. If we look in our online learning system, we're back up here in the Unit 14 material. Actually, I'm sorry, it's the Unit 15 material. And there's a practice amortization. And that's that loan we just worked together in class. Again, done out for you 12 months. Studying this isn't going to help you. But if you do this on your own and then come back and compare your answers, see how you did within the pennies, right? Let's not get excited if we're a few cents off. It could be a mistake in rounding. But you see in our 12 months here, we started with our $416.67. Within the first year, you're down $4 whole. That's $4 less that you're paying in interest. That's $4 more that you're paying in principal. It's so small, but guys, we're talking about a period of 30 years. That's a long time. Some of you on this call may not be that old. Yeah. It's a big commitment when you're purchasing a home and you're committing to the lender. You may also, oh, one more thing, I'm sorry. I get asked, are they always going to give us the $499.55? Are they always going to give us this as the problem did? And the answer is no. So when we get to Unit 15, we're going to learn how to find the $499.55. So if they don't give it to you, we have a formula to find it. Please look ahead real quick, page 387. On page 387, you got numbers 28, 29, and 30. Everybody see that? These are great problems. They feed off of each other. I love these problems, but we can't do them until we finish Unit 15 because we need the formula to find the debt service. We need the formula to find the monthly payment. So hold off on 28, 29, and 30 until we get through Unit 15. Another question you may see on your test, math question you may see about interest, is called interest over the life of the loan. In other words, if you're going to go in and borrow money, you may at some point wonder, how much interest am I going to end up paying? If I make this payment 360 times, how much interest am I going to end up paying? Interest over the life of the loan. So we have two choices. You can either amortize this thing 360 times and add up the monthly interest column, which you do not have time to do. So our other option is to know the formula for interest over the life of the loan. And the formula is over here on the left. When you take your monthly payment, what is that monthly payment? And you times it by the number of months. How many times are you going to make that payment? Again, a 30-year loan is 360 months. Take the year, the years of the loan and times it by 12. And that'll tell you how many payments. The monthly payment times the total number of payments gives you your total principal and interest. Your total debt service. From that, you deduct your principal. What did you borrow from the bank? And that gives you your interest over the life of the loan. So this loan we've been working, if you only make the minimum payment for the next 30 years to pay back that $100,000, you're going to end up paying the bank $79,838. Y'all put that bonus towards your, no, I'm just kidding. But you guys see, if you never pay anything more, that's how much interest you're going to end up paying. So there's amortization, which is breaking it down monthly, how much is applied to principal and interest each month. And then there's interest over the life of the loan, which is looking at the big picture. How much interest am I going to pay at the end of 30 years, at the end of 360 months? Questions? In the lender world, we have something called a loan to value ratio. What this does for the lender is it tells them how much do they want to borrow compared to the value of the property. The loan to value ratio is what you're asking the lender for, the percentage of the loan, of the percentage of the purchase price that you're asking the lender for. And I have put this in a T-bar. We're going to put our ratio, our rate or percent, or our ratio goes on the bottom right. We got our loan to value ratio. Again, through the eyes of the lender, if you are asking for money, if you want to borrow money, the lender cares about me, right? And through the eyes of the lender, when you come in and say, I want to borrow money, they're going to determine how much of the purchase price, how much of that value are you asking them for? I'll talk about the second bullet point in just 1 second. So remember that example we gave earlier? We said, let me see if I can't remember this. It should be close. We said you were buying a $500,000 house. You're asking the lender for $450,000. So the question is, what is the lender's loan to value ratio? Back fourth line means divide. So you take 450,000 divided by 500,000. Which means on your calculator, you get a rate of 0.9. How do we convert rate to percent? Move the decimal over 2 places. So you get 0.9 on your calculator, which means the lender's loan to value ratio is 90%. Through the eyes of the lender, how much of the value are you asking for? So again, you're asking the lender for 90%, which means you're bringing your cute little 10%, right? You're bringing your cute little $50,000 to the table. Through the eyes of the lender determines the value. The lender originates the loan on the sales price or the appraised value, whichever is less. The lender requires the appraisal. The buyer gets to pay for it, but the lender requires it. So the lender can say, this is what a buyer's going to pay for it. This is the contracted sales price. This is what the appraiser thought their opinion of value was. With our lender hat on, which one is less risky? Whichever one is less. So what if? I hear you. Julie, what if? I hear you. What if the sales price, can I erase the red? Very good. Can I erase? So let's say the sales price is 500,000. And the property appraises, the appraiser comes back and says it's worth 490,000. So the sales price is 500,000. The property appraises for 490,000. Which one is the lender going to originate the loan on? Which one is the lender going to issue the loan? They're going to issue on whichever one is less. So your loan, the lender's loan to value ratio is going to be based off of the 490,000. But hold up, aren't you contractually obligated to pay the seller 500,000? Isn't that what you guys agreed to when you went under contract? So what happens? Well, we got some possibilities. One of the first things we can do is ask the seller, we can renegotiate the purchase price. We can ask the seller to come $10,000 off. Does the seller have any obligation to reduce that purchase price? Do they have to agree to that? No. Seller's going, you told me you'd give me $500,000. I'm not coming down. I've already spent that money. But option one is to ask the seller. Option two, the buyer may have $10,000 laying around. Maybe the buyer has money in savings. Maybe they have cash stuffed in a mattress somewhere, buried out in the backyard. So the buyer can come up with the difference. Maybe a third option is to get the two to meet somewhere in the middle. Maybe we ask the seller to reduce the price to $495 and the buyer comes up with $5,000, right? So if it doesn't appraise, it's not over yet. But guys, if the seller's unwilling to come off of the purchase price and the buyer doesn't have the difference, we don't get loan approval and we have to terminate. Very, very rare will the lender allow the buyer to borrow an extra $10,000 because the lender cares about whose interest? Mine. And I want to make sure you can pay this back. I don't want you to have another loan for $10,000. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. It's going to depend on the borrower's credit. And by the way, that does improve borrowing money from a, what do they call it? From a private source. So an example of a private source might be the bank of mom and dad. Mom and dad can gift it, but they won't be able to lend it. Is there a difference in gift versus lend? The expectation of lend is that you pay me back. So if mom and dad gift it, the lender will make mom and dad sign something saying, this is a gift and we don't expect it to be paid back. And if mom and dad lie, they've committed loan fraud, and loan fraud is like really bad. So the lender sees value as the sales price or the appraised value, which is ever less. Remember this crazy market we were coming out of? People were paying in some cases $100,000 more than asking price. They knew it wasn't going to appraise. If it was going to appraise for $100,000 more, don't you think the seller would have put it on the market for $100,000 more, made some more money? Absolutely. They knew it wasn't going to appraise, which means these buyers, a lot of these buyers that bought in the last couple of years, had the money, I guess. Those are the people I need to meet. They had a way to get it. Probably not able to get a loan. Loan to value ratio. The ratio of the lender for the lender. Questions on this one? So tomorrow, we are going to finish unit 14. We're on page 375. So we keep plucking away. We'll get into 15. We'll get through most of 15 tomorrow too. Bring a calculator because we'll get to do some more math. We probably won't get through all the math of 15, but we'll get through most of the material. So trucking right along in financing, finishing up 14, getting into 15. Please look ahead. Don't forget about that midterm. And I will see you guys tomorrow night. We'll do it again at 5:30 tomorrow. Thank you. Good night.
Can I ask you a question?